Welcome to Speaking Holistically, the podcast that explores the power of alternative medicine, natural healing, and homeopathic solutions to help you achieve true wellness. Each week, Dr. Jen and Amy G dive into the world of holistic health, discussing researched, time-tested remedies with expert insights from Dr. Jen, as well as real-life stories from patients to empower you to take charge of your health. So if you're ready to embrace a more natural path to wellness, let's start speaking holistically, because true healing begins from within. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Speaking Holistically. I'm your co-host, Amy G, with my wonderful co-host, Dr. Jen. Hi, Dr. Jen.
Hi, Amy.
This episode is the Family Health Hub. So we cover issues for men's and women's health, as well as children and even pets. Sometimes it's going to be physical health. Other times it will be emotional, mental health. And today is going to be a mental health topic for the family. So Jen, why don't you kick us off?
So yeah, Amy, you and I were talking about different things to discuss, and you and I have different scenarios in our household. So we're both going to discuss kind of what we go through or ways to keep our family healthy, emotionally as well as physically. So I have 4 kids, and we are a very busy family, as most families are. But the one thing that we have always done is checked in with each other every single night. So when the kids were a lot littler, we have older teens and adults and stuff now. But when they were little, we would do flashcards, and it was the states.
Flashcards are so fun.
Well, so we would do math flashcards, and people are like, what? But you can make anything fun. And I have brought up that we do homeschool. So that was part of it. Our oldest actually graduated high school at 15 and had his associates at 17. So,
God, that's incredible.
And it's not because we're overly brilliant, and it was just because the kids got the education they needed for themselves, and they all took different paths, which you'll figure out as time goes on as we're talking about this. But we did things that kind of made things fun. So we made math fun, we made science fun, we made everything fun. But we had flashcards that were of the states, and it had capitals, it had the state birds, it had the state flowers, it had the state motto, all this stuff. So, whoever got to sit there on the hearth and quiz the rest of the group, was super, super excited that night that they got to do that. So that was something that we've done. So we spent some time together doing that. We'd play a game called Chicken Tracks, which you use, and some people call it chicken feed or whatever, but it's with dominoes. So we lay on the floor, we throw them all out on the ground, and yes, we get down on the floor, and then we get ourselves back up off the ground. Right? But we've always tried to spend. We don't succeed every day. We're human, but we've always tried to succeed with spending enough time with our kids and connecting with them on different levels. So spending 30 minutes to an hour just with all of us together, no media, no phones, no screen time, no nothing. The lights kind of off in the most of the house, those dim just a little bit, just to kind of create just a little bit warmer of an environment as the day goes on. So that's something that we've always tried to do. The other thing that we do is we go into each children's room every night, the ones that still live at home, but we've done that always, is we've always kissed and hugged them goodnight. One of our kids was like, I don't want you kissing me on the lips anymore. It feels weird. I'm like, okay. Did it break my heart? Probably to a certain degree, just because I've always been very affectionate toward my children. Did I say anything to him? Absolutely not. That's where his level of comfort was, and that's fine with me. If that's where you are, that's totally fine. I said, okay, but I'm still going to kiss you on the cheek. And he said, that's fine. I'm like, okay. So instead of feeling shunned and brokenhearted, I was like, we're just going to work through this, and whatever he's comfortable with, it's his body. We're just going to do this. So my husband came from a completely different background than I did. His parents, in fact, when I started dating him, we would go to see his parents, and he'd be like, all right, bye. And they'd say bye, and they'd walk out the door. And I'm like, wait, you don't hug your parents? Like, you don't have to kiss them, but you don't even hug them? I mean, it was very weird for me. And then when he ended up in my household, with my family, he was like, oh my gosh, you guys are so affectionate. And I was like, yeah, I guess. Like, it's just two worlds colliding. So he is a little bit more uncomfortable with physical touch, with, he's always hugged his kids, but just, it doesn't come organically for him at all. So, he does try to make an effort to go in and hug the kids every night, or, rub him on the head or whatever he needs to do to get his comfort level to go in there and say goodnight to them. And sometimes if they decide to go to bed before we do, they will come in and say goodnight to us every night. In fact, one of our sons comes home from work every single night, kind of late, and he literally comes up the stairs, comes straight into our room and tells us that he's home and, tells us how his day went. So he always checks in. He still does this. But that's the kind of relationships we've tried to foster in the household. You don't have to share everything with us, but we're going to check in with you, make sure you're okay. How did your day go? And my kids, more often than not, when I come home from work, will say, Mom, how was your day? And I'm like, then they actually care. It's not like, hey, how was your day? It's like they actually care. So those kind of connections, and as we age, some parents are finding that their kids don't call them or come over or spend time with them. And part of that is because of the relationship that they fostered or didn't foster as they were younger. So, we lost both of my in-laws a couple of years ago, 3 months apart. And even though they weren't super warm and fuzzy, it was really, really hard on my husband. And, there were some things that I think my husband realized that he needed to change with his kids because there were things that he was missing when he was growing up. And now that his parents weren't there anymore, there was no do-overs. So it was kind of a jolt and woke him up a little bit and made sure that he was really checking in with the kids. So he also, works on vehicles with them. He has taught them how to change. My daughter changed her own shocks and struts and brakes and everything. And they change their own oil and they do all these things. So that's the way my husband connects with them more so than board games and things of that sort. One more thing that we have done, which is kind of fun with the extended family. So like with my parents, when they come to visit, they don't live in the local area. So when they come to visit, we have done this where we've given each of the kids a white erase board, and I'll ask questions. Now, of course, I always generally know the answers to these questions, so it's hysterical. But like, what is grandma's birthday? And they have to scribble it on the board, and then they flip it over, right? So it's super fun. And one time our youngest said that my mom was born in 1792.
Oh my God.
I was like, what? So this was years ago. And so she's like, man, I look pretty good for, 200 years, that sort of a thing, 250 years. So, so it's stuff like that. And then they get a chance to talk about like their birthday and who they potentially share their birthday with, or what their parents thought, or what they know about their birth. Also, like, where did grandma and grandpa meet? And then they get a chance to tell the story of how they met. So our kids get a chance to get to know them, not just, I don't know, it was grandma and grandpa and he used to take me for ice cream. Like, they actually know about their grandparents, which for me is important because we're only here for a little while. So, just connecting with the kids without any media for 30 minutes to 60 minutes a day, you'll really start to see a difference in how your kids communicate with you. And, they won't hide things from you depending on how you react to those things. So it's something that I'm always checking. And if my daughter is off a little bit, I'm always checking in with her. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, I don't want to talk about it right now. I'm like, all right, but I'm here. And then I'll come in 10 minutes later. Hey, what's going on? So it's not always to that degree, but, I kind of know where that line is and how far I can push it. But, just letting them know that I'm here and I care. If I ask once and I don't ever come back, they're like, oh, well, you didn't care,
That's a great point. Well, yeah. And I think every family's different. So my perspective, my life is quite different than yours. I have 0 children. Please don't send me any sympathy emails. This was a personal decision, not, it's not that I couldn't have them. I just want to clarify, but.
And I had planned on having none and have 4. So, best laid plans, I guess.
Life just takes you in different directions, but yeah. And it's funny just listening to you talk about your kids and how you connect with them. I know for Pete and I, like I kiss him goodnight or he kisses me goodnight and good morning. And how are you doing? How did you sleep? What's going, just to check in, right? That's a constant thing for us. But also we walk together 5 miles a day. And during that time, I have to say, it's just, we're completely unplugged. We're just out walking in nature. And we've sorted out all kinds of, we talk about everything. We talk about current news events, issues that are happening within the family, something within we got to figure out between each other, anything and everything. Those talks are invaluable. And I think they're just kind of the cornerstone of our communication as a couple. So regardless of your household situation, kids, no kids, maybe you have kids, but you're an empty nester, whatever, just connecting with your partner and checking in, or connecting with your kids is, and finding ways to do it unplugged without social media or your phone or the TV, whatever, is just so critical to the mental health of yourself and your family.
It's true. And I mean, even if you're having a meal together once a week, if you can't find the time because of sports or whatever you've done with your life to make it as busy or as not busy as you want it to be, checking in and saying, hey, what was, I used to do this with the kids. What was the top three things that happened to you today? And was there anything negative that you didn't exceptionally love? Not like, oh,
Yeah.
did you have a bad thing happen to you? I don't want to frame it like that for them. So, they'll tell me the three things and we hyper focus on the good. And, I mean, really with the lives that we have, most of the stuff that happens in it is first world problems. So and that's something that we've always kind of, done with the kids, like really whatever the problem is, it's like, okay, well, there's a solution, you know? So just checking in with the kids and having them instead of journaling. A lot of people do journal. They'll journal about their day and they'll come up with three good things and something that they need to work on or whatever. But we try to do that orally with our kids so that they're sharing it with us. And then the kids have a chance to communicate and bring in their perspective from where they are. So it's nice to watch them connect. And sometimes the conversation will focus on the two of them and everybody kind of is drowned out. And it's great. I love that because then I can say, okay, someday when I'm not here anymore, because I always say, we're not getting out of this alive. That's not how this ends. I want to make sure that I am not the center of their world because once I'm gone, I don't want their world to collapse. So I do want them to have those bonds with their siblings. And so when that happens, I get to kind of take a step back and let them have their own relationship. And that's one of the best things that I can see.
I love that. I really do. Encouraging the bonding between the siblings because you're right. I mean, I have one sister. She's the only sibling. That's all I've got. And it's the longest relationship we have in our lives is with our siblings. So, fostering those bonds and those connections and those relationships so that they can function without you when you do leave this earth. Although I can't personally think of you leaving this earth. I don't want to think about that.
Well,
I'm not sure what I'd do without you, but
and the kids do, sometimes our kids don't fight. People, your kids don't fight. I'm like, not really. I mean, we've kind of been like, okay, you can be irritated with them, but can you go discuss that with them? Like both of you come in here, we're going to chat about this, And one time my daughter was frustrated with something and she's a little bit stubborn. She got the worst of both my husband and myself for sure. And
I
I said,
disagree. She's pretty great.
she, she's amazing, but she is strong-willed and then some. And I'm not complaining because she's a force to be reckoned with for sure. But raising her makes it a little bit more intense for sure some days. But I asked her. I said, "Is that the hill you're going to die on? Like that's what you're going to do with that? Think about it. Like long term, yes, you can be frustrated or grumpy or whatever, stubborn. But at the end of the day, like." It's not important. You look 10 years down the road, is that actually important? Like, let it go. It's not a big deal. And so, these are the conversations that we have instead of letting her mull it over in her head and ruminate with it. And there's a lot of us that do that where we have a thought and, it's like our brains are in a round room with 72 doors and we're trying all the doors and none of them are opening and we're trying to figure this out and come up with a solution. And, and there's no external input to be like, hey, calm down and turn the door handle in the other direction, that sort of a thing. So it's something that we definitely, make sure that our kids have a relationship with us, but also with themselves. And even just that 30 minutes a day and going in every night before bed and just, hugging each one of them, kissing them on the cheek, whatever, wherever their levels are of affection really lies is perfectly fine with me. So, and, I find that when they're ready, they'll come and sit on the bed with us, as we've gone to bed or whatever, they'll sit on the end of the bed and talk to us about their day or whatever. So if they need to decompress after work, they'll come in later and I'm like, I'm exhausted. I need to go to sleep. I have to be up at the office at 7 a.m. Can we hurry this up? Part of me is doing that. And part of me is like, okay, and letting them kind of work through it verbally with us is important. So, that was one thing my mother-in-law, when I first met her, she obviously wasn't my mother-in-law at the time. She said to me, she goes, how do I get my kids to talk to me?
Aw.
And I was like, what? So it hadn't even been something I'd ever really contemplated. And I was like, well, maybe turn the TV off. That's literally at the dinner table. There was the dinner table and then there was a cart right next door to it. And it was It was on
Wow.
playing Wheel of Fortune or whatever was on TV at that time of night. And so they all just ate and watched TV, and nobody ever talked and nobody ever communicated. I was like, turn off the TV, turn it off.
Such a
And
great tip. Yeah.
they wouldn't do it because the dad, my father-in-law, liked watching TV, liked having the noise or whatever it was, and maybe it was his way of not having to connect with his kids because he didn't know how to, because he came from a family that didn't know how to. So, sometimes it's not that we don't want to, it's that we don't have the tools. And so sometimes just that little uncomfortable silence and trying to connect with your kids or your spouse is, like you taking a 5 mile walk every day is really important time for you to connect with Pete.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And I think the thing I'll say, and granted, I don't have kids, but for any parent who wants to start this practice, push past the awkwardness of it initially, and also allow yourself to ask for this space and this time with your kids. Meaning, don't talk yourself out of it because they'd rather be playing video games or they'd rather be on their phone. They're going to probably give you some resistance at first, right?
Yeah. And there are times that we have to wait till one of them's done with their match. I'm like, ugh, like these computers drive me insane. Um, but I'm like, hey, when you're done, I need you to come out. And so I tell everybody else, don't you dare any of you start a match. Like we're meeting. This is what we're doing. So the other thing too that what we've done is, well, I've done is we've my kids when they misbehaved, I am I try to use humor with everything, and I don't like to yell, and don't think I haven't. But, I really try to figure out where they are before I react. Like, have they eaten enough protein? Have they had enough water? Did they get enough sleep last night? Like, what are their hormones doing as teenagers? Like, I'm not going to sit here and scream at them when they're just already frustrated and pissed off and they can't figure out what to do with themselves. I mean, you
Yeah.
remember when you were 15, 16, 17, how frustrated you were at every turn, and your parents were so stupid, and you can't wait to be an adult, and you can't wait to not have these rules. And, and a lot of it is the hormones preparing your life so that you leave the nest at some point. Sometimes you have to get frustrated enough. So we have created a space where if they were misbehaving, instead of giving them negative feedback, I would say, you just won yourself a trip to Attention Island. Let's go. And so and they're like, no, when they were little, right? And that would be our bed. So we would go leave the rest of the family and go and sit on my bed. And sometimes we call it huggling. So we huggle and snuggle. And so
Oh,
I would give them all the positive attention. I would kiss and kiss and kiss their cheeks and hold on to them. I hate this, like whatever it was, right? And then I'm like, as soon as you find yourself a new attitude and you can talk to me about what's actually going on, then yeah, we could totally leave. But right now, I can tell you need extra attention, and we're on Attention Island for this exact reason. And so it was something that by the end of it, they were laughing, they were giggling, they were happy, they were calm, their nervous systems had been regulated, like all this kind of stuff had changed for them. And even now, our oldest is in his 20s, and when he comes to the house and he needs to talk to us, he's like, hey, mom, can I talk to you? And I'm like, sure. He turns and makes the beeline to our bedroom, and he'll sit on the bed and talk to me because
wow.
it's something that we have, like a space that we have created and a time frame and whatever else. And so they will absolutely do that. Like, okay, come here. They'll drag me into my room to talk to me because that was where they got that connection that they needed. So once again, instead of giving them negative attention, I was like, you clearly need attention, and you're not getting negative. You're not getting yelled at. You're going to get lots of love until we can figure this out. So
That's so beautiful. I love that. You won yourself a trip to Attention Island. That's outstanding. I feel like I hope parents borrow that from you because that's really great. What a great about face to handle the bad behavior, whatever it is that they're doing that they shouldn't be doing.
yeah, and they'll talk to you. They may not talk immediately, trust me, but they do talk, and they don't leave until they're in a different space. So, and it's not like I'm holding them hostage in a cage. They're in a room, they could get up and leave. I'm like, listen, we're not leaving until we figure this out. So it kind of forces them to regulate their emotions, figure out in their head, so not just emotionally, but in their head, like what they're thinking, and then hitting it head on with communicating what their needs are or how they felt when I said something to them or whatever the situation was, which then I think helps them hopefully in marriage someday, that they don't get ticked off with their wife and storm out the door and drive away and don't come back because they don't know how to handle something. So
that is an excellent point.
it's all about, for me, is creating healthy, happy, and functional humans. I don't care how much money they make. I don't care what they do for a living. I just want them happy, healthy, and functional for sure.
I think some parents tiptoe around it and feel like, I don't really want to ask for this time and have us sit for 30 minutes without distractions. And how are my kids going to respond when they, their phone is glued to their hand? And how do I even approach this? So, but I love that. All great ideas. Well, thank you, Dr. Jen. Thank you for your time and your wisdom as always. And this has been an episode of Family Health Hub. I'll put the link below to our school community. So we have an excellent school community with everybody interacting, sharing tips and tricks, and having great conversations. So I'll put that link in there as well. Please join us. Thank you so much for listening today, everybody. Bye-bye.
That wraps up another episode of Speaking Holistically. Thank you for listening. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights and inspiration to take charge of your health. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, be sure and join the Speaking Holistically school community by clicking the link in the show notes. There, you'll get access to daily podcast episodes, weekly live Q&As, educational content, and so much more. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, be well, stay curious, and keep speaking holistically.